Hi, my name is Anna Mendez, and today I'll be presenting on social media and anxiety in emerging adults. This presentation will look at current research-based evidence on social media use relating to anxiety during emerging adulthood, which is roughly ages between 18 and 29. So I'll be focusing on recent peer-reviewed research and approaching this topic from a public health perspective rather than an opinion-based viewpoint. So, first, I want to give a little background on the issue. Social media has become one of the main ways emerging adults communities form relationships and compare themselves to others. According to research by Taylor and colleagues published in 2024, social media use is deeply embedded in daily life for this age group. So, emerging adulthood is also a developmental stage where people are especially sensitive to social evaluation and identity formation. Jones and Rosenman in their 2025 study actually explained that this period involves heightened awareness of how others perceive you, which can increase vulnerability to anxiety. Because of this overlap between high social media use and emotional sensitivity, where researchers are increasingly interested in how online environments affect mental health, which is also discussed in public health frameworks by Hausman and Odom in 2022. From a public health perspective, the issue matters because social media exposure affects a very large population. Nearly all emerging adults use social media in some form, as highlighted in the literature by Taylor and colleagues in 2024. Anxiety doesn't just affect emotions, it can also interfere with school performance, work responsibilities, and relationships. Hausman and Odom, in their 2022 textbook, describe anxiety as a condition that can reduce overall functioning and quality of life. So researchers also show that research, sorry, that also shows that anxiety related to social media use may influence other health behaviors such as eating patterns and alcohol use. So Murley and his colleagues in 2024, the 2024 study emphasized that even when anxiety is present, that impact can extend beyond mental health alone, which is why this becomes a population level concern. Looking at current research, there's consistent evidence linking social media use with psychological distress. Taylor and his colleagues in 2024 actually found that higher levels of social media use were associated with increased loneliness and distress among emerging adults. So that's important to be here because simply being connected online doesn't always reduce feelings of isolation. So the study also points out that passive social media use, like scrolling without interaction, actually shows stronger association with distress compared to more active engagement. So according to this research, it's not just how much social media is used, but how it's used that appears to matter for mental health outcomes. So another important angle is how social media affects anxiety, knowledge, and coping. So Walensky and Petit in a 2024 study found that higher social media use was associated with lower knowledge and about anxiety. This means that even though mental health content is widely available online, it doesn't always lead to better understanding. So they also found that people used social media more frequently tended to use coping strategies and in a indiscriminate way rather than selecting strategies that were appropriate or evidence based. According to the authors, this kind of coping may actually worsen anxiety instead of helping managing it. Social evaluation plays a major role in anxiety during emerging adulthood. So, Jones and Roseman, in their 2025 study, explained that social media increases exposure to evaluation through likes, comments, and visibility. So, for individuals who are already sensitive to social judgment, this can heighten anxiety. Their study also shows that people who interpret social cues more negatively tend to report higher anxiety and lower perceived social support. So, according to this research, it's not only what happens online, but how individuals interpret online interactions that influence anxiety outcomes. More recent research looks at emotional mechanisms that explain these relationships. Um, Hutchinson, Montag, and Alhai in a 2025 study found that fear of negative evaluation is strongly linked to problematic social media use. So basically, people who worry more about how they are judged tend to engage in more compulsive checking behaviors. Their research also highlights emotion dysregulation and intolerance and uncertainty as key factors. When people struggle to manage emotions or tolerate uncertainty, social media can increase anxiety rather than reduce it. So, according to the authors, these emotional factors help explain why social media affects some individuals more negatively than others. Um, So, anxiety related to social media use can also spill over into health behaviors. Merley and colleagues in their 2024 study found that anxiety connects social media use to disordered eating and alcohol disturbance, especially when social support is low. So, this suggests that anxiety acts as a bridge between online behavior and physical health outcomes. So, from a public health standpoint, this highlights how much health and physical health are closely interconnected rather than them being separate issues. It's important to stay balanced and objective when discussing these topics. Hausman and Odom in 2022 emphasized that social media can also provide benefits such as connection, support, and access to information, but not all social media use is harmful. So, research shows that outcomes vary depending on individual vulnerability and emotional regulation skills and the type of social media use. So, according to Taylor and colleagues, context matters, and this helps explain why findings in this literature are sometimes mixed. From a public health perspective, the focus should be on prevention and education rather than elimination. Hausman and Odom suggest that improving digital mental health literacy may help reduce anxiety risk. Hutchinson and colleagues also highlight that strengthening emotional regulation skills can be protective. And in addition, Merley and colleagues show that strong offline social support reduces negative outcomes, suggesting that interventions should address both online and offline environments. So, in conclusion, current research consistently shows associations between social media use and anxiety in emerging adults. Studies by Taylor and colleagues, as well as Hutchinson and colleagues, demonstrate that emotional and social mechanisms play a central role in these relationships. While social media can offer benefits, it also poses risks for vulnerable individuals. And overall, evidence based public health strategies are needed to promote balanced, informed, and healthy social media use. And this last slide, these are all the sources used in this presentation. They are all peer reviewed and academic sources listed in APA format. The studies provide the research foundation for understanding social media and anxiety from a public health perspective. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.